Gary, as Alex said, a resounding no. We have you guys saying that potentially the hostile overture from Barrick is just a way of getting negotiating leverage in the JV in Nevada. Same time, we have Barrick CEO Mark Bristow saying that potentially the JV proposal you put forward is just a smokescreen to fend off the hostile deal. Help me out here. What's going on?
You know, the joint venture is a realistic and bona fide offer to sit down, and that's what we need to do. We haven't done that. Sit down with Barrick and work through the details to be able to deliver what we both believe are synergies that are available in Nevada for both our shareholders. Our approach we've taken is we've reviewed what they proposed here a week ago. We look at our own track record in terms of delivery. We're up 65% in total shareholder return. Since 2014, Barrick's down 22%. We've looked at what they've proposed, and it just doesn't stack up against what we've got in terms of the Gold Corp transaction to be able to deliver that $4.4 billion in value from the things we've identified by applying our proven operating model to our assets versus what they've proposed. And also, we believe we can get both. We can do the Gold Corp transaction and work with Barrick to deliver that value from Nevada through a joint venture.
Let's talk about what they've proposed. So, Bristow asked you for a meeting apparently today. Have you accepted?
Yeah, we have. I've gone back to him, and I'm looking forward to hopefully catching up with him later today here in New York.
Here in New York?
That's what I'm hoping for.
And this will be to discuss the JV or to discuss a potential full merger?
This will be the discussion on the joint venture with what we proposed yesterday.
So obviously the offer they made, their opening offer, discount to premium, you guys were very quick to come out and reject it. Is there a level at which it would be acceptable for a full merger between these companies? You
know, from our standpoint, when you take a look at the sovereign risk of their assets, you take a look at some of their ESG performance that they've had historically, and the risk that Mark ran very successfully for a long time, 5 assets in Africa. This just is a much larger organization that he's running. He's still in the middle of actually integrating the Barrick Randgold business together, running it under what his operating model is going forward. I think just exposing Newmont shareholders to all that risk, when we can work together, come up with the best from both our businesses in terms of how we shape a joint venture and how it can deliver best value for both shareholders, just seems to me to make a lot of sense.
And you've proposed a 45-55 split and 50-50 split on the operations in Nevada. Is that just an opening offer, and is there room to move?
Yeah, the 45-55 was based on consensus NAV numbers on the Nevada-related assets. So if there's things that don't make sense in there or we need to work through, we're more than happy to work through the negotiations on that. In terms of how it gets managed, we'd both appoint the key operating people, but at the end of the day, the voting on the day-to-day and how things operate, you know, is the person who ends up owning the majority economic interest, and in this case, it's Barrick.
Now, one of my smarter colleagues, David Fickling, wrote in a note this morning that one potential outcome here would be to put all of the Nevada assets into a new co, spin it off, and give some exposure to both Barrick and Newmont shareholders. Is that something that's on the table at this point?
We're open to different suggestions. The thing that doesn't do, though, is have the input. Once you spin it off, it doesn't have the input from our expertise in operating, you know, a global mining business and applying that on those assets. And same thing what Barrick might bring to that.
Already we're in this, I guess, place a week into this this debate between the two companies about what should be the outcome here, where it has got quite rough. You've had a bit of a war of words. Obviously, you called their bid desperate and bizarre. I think they've said some fairly unsavory things about the ability of you guys to run a successful business. But then I have this quote from Mark Bristow, the CEO over at Barrick, where he says he doesn't have a single solitary thing to say bad about you or Tom Palmer, the COO, president. And he said he hasn't met you, he doesn't know you. Isn't it strange that we're sort of in this very fractious position already, and yet he says we don't even know each other?
That's why I think it's important for us to sit down and work through the details and face-to-face work through it. When I shook his hand a week ago at the BMO conference, he said we need to talk, and it's good he's reached out last night, and hopeful that we can get together here in the near term.
And in terms of what the shareholders are saying, obviously you do have quite significant cross-ownership of the two companies. What conversations have you been having with investors, and what would they like to see?
You know, the different shareholders we've talked with, and that's why I'm here in New York and in the East Coast over the next couple of days, is talking with shareholders about this. Got good feedback yesterday from one key shareholder who owns both of us, in fact, all three with Gold Corp as well. He'd really like to see us sit down at the table and work together to form a joint venture.
Now, obviously, in the backdrop of all of this, there is a succession plan going on. And Newmont, you've said you're going to leave at the end of 2019. If you stay on and your sort of final act is to fend off this potential hostile takeover from Barrick, does that then leave the shareholders with a slightly difficult position of having new management run a company that could have been taken over by one of their big rivals?
You know, I've been working very close. Tom Palmer, our COO, has been COO for the last 3 years, so he's basically been running a global operation for 3 years, which is about 3 years longer than Mark has had the opportunity to run a global operation. We've got a sound business model with great people that support it around the world. Yesterday we came out with 7-year guidance for the combined Gold Corp Newmont assets. That's something that you haven't seen yet from Barrick. Barrick's only put forward 2019 guidance, and one has to wonder here, a business that's come together at the beginning of this year, why can't they tell us what's going to happen after 2019? How can you believe someone can deliver value out like they've proposed when they haven't even given guidance past 2019? That's where I think our proven operating model really makes a difference. But
they did give some very interesting guidance in the idea of a pro forma company. If they did put Barrick and Newmont together, synergies they said of around $7 billion up to 2039. Is that consistent with what you would expect to see if this merger did go through?
We see synergies there. At the end of the day, how can you come to that number without sitting down and working together? That's what's really going to be the important next step.
So that's where we go from here. You are going to sit down with Bristow, you're going to negotiate the JV primarily, but also obviously he has said he's going to maintain the hostile takeover. He's going to take it to the shareholders. How do you have those two conversations simultaneously?
We need to sit down and talk first on the Nevada joint venture, and I look forward to doing that with Mark.
Last question. We've had lots and lots of news come out of you and obviously from Bristow as well and various other people around this. One person has been notably absent from that noise, and that's John Thornton. What's his role in all of this?
You know, at the end of the day, John's the executive chair. Mark is accountable to John for running the business, and you know, I suspect that John is clearly over the top of all that's going on here.